as we speak. And I am getting social media hooked up. Okay. All right, let me pop over to show notes. And there, I believe, is a logo. Show remote, there it is. Save. Okay, I got to do one more little adjustment, guys, and we'll be ready to fly. Okay, on my end, we are ready to rock and roll. Amanda, Rob, are we ready to kick this off?
Do this.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. All righty, here we go. We have Mossad Ayub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Mossad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. And I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, November 7th, 2022, Election Eve. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse. And tonight we talk with Dean Rieck from Buckeye Firearms about two cities in Ohio who think they're a law unto themselves.
And I'm Amanda Suffolk from Ohio, by the way. And we're going to talk about SAF challenging another unconstitutional California gun law. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Hang on.
All right, there we go. Episode 639 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. And welcome back. It's Monday night at 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters. That means it's time for the Polite Society podcast. And as I usually do, I'm going to start with Rob. Rob, man, what's been up since the last time we did a Polite Society together?
Right, you can't say since we saw each other, since it's been hours. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. I was on the Weekly Bullet on Saturday. I joined Bill Frady on Lock and Load this afternoon. Amanda, thank you for making time to join us tonight, because it's Election Eve.
It is. So I spent part of the day moving signs and talking to people and did a Turning Point presentation and, just pre-election things. And, but really, when we talk about what am I doing, what did I do all week, this is typically where we say, what did I do all week? I just want to say I did politics. And I have a big question, and I've been pondering this question, and that is, why do politicians think that they have to do an obligatory shooting a gun video, commercial, something, when they can't shoot, they can't stand, they can't hold a gun, and they just don't. Who do they think they're fooling? That's my question.
So are they smart enough to say, Amanda, show me what I should do, or no?
Oh no, they're standing like that. You know where you have the teenage girl that's underweight, and you hand her the Smith & Wesson 500, and she tucks in her butt and pushes her shoulders back and holds her gun kind of awkwardly, and so they look like a big inverted C.
Mm-hmm.
That would be it. And then they didn't even have a film crew that was smart enough to angle it so it didn't look so bad. It was a flat-out backwards C. And you just look at it going, you didn't hit anything. There's no way you hit anything. So, Paul, what about you? Any deep thoughts?
Well, I open secret, and I've said this a million times, so it's not even a secret. I do video production for Eye on the Target Radio. And as you started talking about this incident yesterday, you gave out, and I do not remember the person's name, but you gave out the name. I did a fast Google search. Man, it showed up right away. Pulled up the candidate's website. The video is still up.
Oh, yeah.
So I took a screenshot. And yeah, this is, I cannot believe that the person didn't, a 22 rimfire would have knocked them over. Just a puff of recoil was going to knock them over. And anyway,
it's classic.
And this is a Senate candidate in Ohio trying to make everybody believe they're pro Second Amendment because they went out one time to arrange. Yeah, no thanks. On my end, it's been, and I wonder how. And we'll get to, by the way, if you're watching us live, if you're watching us on Polite Society podcast feeds, you can comment on either of the YouTube or the Facebook feeds, and we'll get your comments, put them on the air, and discuss them. One thing I've been dealing a lot with this year, and it's annoying, and I've never dealt with it any other election up to now, is political text messages. I am getting them left, right, and center. And it's annoying. I'm getting 8 to 10 text messages, political text messages a day. I can reply stop, and I'll get the stop reply. You will not receive any more text messages, yada yada. 30 minutes later, same topic, another text message. This is becoming something we need to. I hate to say this is a libertarian, but I'm sorry, there needs to be a law.
No, here's what you need. You need to stop them all, and then they'll start to take you off the list. But what happened, just for clarity, what happened was someone within one of the parties got your number. And then that someone shared it with each of the different offices that are running, candidates that are running. So you're going to get a text from this candidate and that candidate and the other candidate. And even if you say stop to this one, several of the things have been pre-programmed. So it takes about 2 weeks to stop it. So frankly, my advice is tell them all to stop if that's your desire, and then wait. So the next election, it'll be a whole lot clearer.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm getting it from both candidates I agree with, candidates I vehemently support, and candidates that I won't vote for until I'm in the grave.
Mm-hmm. So both parties got your number, is what happened.
Yeah, exactly. I do not know how that happened, but it did. So I've been dealing with that this year, and again, it's just got to stop. It's got to stop. And it's not candidates, it's also issues. So tomorrow is election day.
Somebody made a penny by selling your contact info.
Well, yeah,
Probably
I'd love to find
a
them.
penny.
I'd love to find them, get my penny's worth of revenge. One comment here, and then I think we should get off to our first break so we can get to our guest who is patiently waiting. Dana says, I think that is called pandering.
I don't know. That's not the definition of pandering that I know, so I'm going to have to look that up, Dana. Maybe you're caused me to learn something new for my day.
All right. Well, let's do this. I want to talk a little bit as soon as I find. This is the one thing with running so many shows. You get so many buttons, and they're on different places. Self-Defense Radio Network. I want to talk to everybody real briefly about Self-Defense Radio Network. As you can see, our tagline, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. As you can see right there, we're up on the top left. Right next to us, Rob Morris's Self-Defense Gun Stories. Right below us is Eye on the Target Radio, Amanda and Rob. And there are lots and lots and lots of pro-freedom podcasts you can listen to. Not only can you listen directly off the website, there's subscription information right there. So if you want to subscribe, you can do that from the website as well. Right now, we're going to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got Dean Rieck patiently waiting to be interviewed. As you can see, we've got a little bit of an issue getting logged in. He's going to be joining us by telephone. We'll be back with that right after we hear from ACLDN right now. Hang on, right back, right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, and we're back. This is the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining us on the phone, Dean Rieck. He is the executive director of Buckeye Firearms. Dean, thanks for joining us today, man.
Well, thanks for having me. Sorry you can't see me. Couldn't figure out all the technical issues on my end, but that's probably just as well. I'm told I scare the children.
Well, there are a lot of people that would say it'd be a good thing if my face weren't on. I have a face for radio, although I'm hired to do video. So I'm right there with you, man. Let's talk a little bit. Last week we got news that a Ohio judge knocked down a law that's been in effect for quite a while. I'm trying to remember it's Rob or Amanda, help me out. It was Ohio,
Cleveland and Columbus.
What was the name
Preemption?
of the name of the law? It was Assembly Bill or
House Bill 228.
Oh, House Bill 228 was the name of the bill. And it dealt with statewide preemption, and it was the Stand Your Ground law. My understanding is the judge knocked down preemption. Stand Your Ground still applies in Ohio. Have I got that kind of right?
Well, that's what the issue is we believe that the ruling was actually a very narrow ruling. And if you read it initially, it sounds like it's taking down all of preemption. We don't believe that that's actually what it does. We think that it's a narrow ruling dealing with manufacturing and zoning in the state of Ohio. So that's not the way it's being reported, but that's our reading, our legal take on what this ruling actually does. So what happened was we have preemption. That's what it's generally referred to, and it's in Ohio Revised Code 9.68. And basically what that says is that gun laws are passed at the state level. They're not passed at the city level. So Columbus has never liked that law. They launched a lawsuit about 3 years ago, and the lawsuit has just lingered. It never went anywhere. So recently they decided to launch a lawsuit against the judge who hadn't provided a ruling. And lo and behold, the judge suddenly comes out with a ruling and says that he's going to have a temporary restraining order against at least part of preemption in Ohio. Now, the way this is being reported is that preemption is gone, that cities can pass whatever laws they want. We do not believe that is actually what this ruling says. And the reason that we don't think that is that the Ohio Supreme Court has already dealt with it. They have, on one or two different occasions, have ruled that preemption is valid law in Ohio, and the state legislature has taken 2 bites at this apple already and made their intention clear. There's no way that a local judge, a lower judge, can just come out with a ruling and sweep all of that away.
Dean, Dina, obvious question is, why did the judge... There's a scope of his ruling. He could have said, I believe, that this is just an as-applied ruling, meaning it only affects the cities of Cleveland and Columbus, rather than the entire state.
Rob has a great question. I'm trying to get his question and translate it, and it's.
Dean can't hear you, so you have to ask it in much smaller chunks.
Okay, I highlighted it in show notes.
Did the judge's ruling, did that impact the entire state, or does it just impact Cleveland and Columbus?
Well, again, it's how you read it. The way that we read it, it doesn't impact anything because this is an ongoing lawsuit. So basically, it's just a temporary restraining order that, in our view, basically says that there may be a dispute about whether cities can zone for firearms manufacturers. In other words, if a firearms company wanted to set up a firearm plant in a suburban neighborhood, Columbus or some other city could zone to prevent that. Now, again, that's not the way it's being reported, but we believe it is a very narrow ruling. And so if we're correct, then that's all that this temporary restraining order would do. Now, I think it's also fair to report, that on Friday, the Attorney General, Dave Yost in Ohio, filed to have a stay on this ruling, and they've appealed it. So that just happened last Friday. So the Attorney General is fighting this case. This case will continue. And we're not really clear that anything is going to happen before this case is settled. So I would encourage people not to panic. We're on top of it. I'm soliciting opinions from other attorneys as well as our own, so that we're just bringing everybody into it and making sure that we're not going to have a problem.
Any idea how long it will be till a judge hears the appeals?
No idea. I mean, this case has just sat around for 3 years.
Yeah.
And nothing has happened, so I don't know if it's going to speed up. But I will say this. This is election eve, as you've said, and this makes it all the more important if you live in Ohio and you haven't voted yet and you're going to go out tomorrow and vote. You got to make sure to vote from the top to the bottom of your ticket, and that includes the races for the Ohio Supreme Court. We've endorsed Sharon Kennedy, Pat DeWine, and Pat Fisher, and all 3 of those need to stay on the court. So you've got to vote for those candidates, Sharon Kennedy, Pat DeWine, Pat Fisher, because if we lose the Supreme Court and something like this goes back to the Supreme Court, we could be in real trouble. If we lose preemption, we lose everything, because any city, any township, any village, any county could pass their own gun laws. And so all the progress that we've made in 20 years would just vaporize. Now, I know what's happening, but I just want you to understand that these Supreme Court seats are really important, so don't skip those.
Okay. And I think you've already kind of answered this one, but Rob has a question in show notes. I know you folks are on the side of the Ohio law, but as far as in court, who represents Ohio's laws in this lawsuit?
Well, this lawsuit is the state of Ohio against Columbus. So, Columbus is basically, suing the state. They're trying to get home rule to apply to firearms as well. So it's Dave Yost at the Attorney General's office who's, behind the lawsuit defending Ohio in this case. So, they're pretty good about this. We know that they think the right way about firearms and about the Second Amendment, so we're going to see how they do. Right now, we're just standing by, continuing to do our research and getting ready just in case that we have to do something. We hope we don't. We hope this case will, conclude and the state will win, and then that will be that.
Next one, then. This is kind of interesting that the judge held his decision for 3 years and then decided in favor of Columbus. That kind of brings up this question: who pays the legal bills for this one, Ohio or Columbus? It was because it was part of the preemption bill there.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question because the state of Ohio is the state of Ohio. So when Ohio is being sued, Ohio is going to pay the bill for that. What the part of the preemption law 9.68, it basically says that any organization or any individual can bring a suit, and if they prevail, then the legal fees are paid for. That's another thing that Columbus doesn't like. But the reality is, the city of Columbus has pretty darn deep pockets, and an organization like Buckeye Firearms Association, our pockets aren't quite that deep. I'll tell you, the last lawsuit that we had against Columbus cost us almost $300,000. So you can imagine, and that was just one lawsuit with a few hearings and some paperwork. When you're paying attorneys $200, $300, $400 an hour, it adds up really, really fast. So Columbus can just screw around with this stuff. They can lose cases. They really don't care. And, the reason that was included in the law is to make sure that there aren't frivolous laws being passed and that individuals or organizations like ours actually have a fair opportunity to launch lawsuits and force cities to comply with Ohio law because generally they don't. Cities like Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Dayton, they just don't always obey the law, which is kind of ironic because they're always looking at us and talking about our side as if we're the bad guys. We're the ones trying to abide by the law, by the letter of the law, and they're the ones who are always trying to twist it.
And Amanda has this question in show notes. I think it's a great question. Excuse me. This is really about zoning, not about guns. Why is City Attorney Zach Klein saying they will consider an assault weapons ban?
It beats me. My best guess is that they know that this is a narrow ruling, and they're just saying stuff because that's what they do. They don't have any repercussions when they say things. If I were to be a little more conspiratorial, I might say that they're saying things like that because they want to encourage other cities to try to pass laws. And if, let's say we have a dozen cities that start passing AR bans, magazine bans, safe storage laws, and so on, what do we have to do? Well, we've got to sue them. That's the only recourse. So, they could just be screwing with us, to tell you the truth. But I'm hoping that this lawsuit with the state of Ohio goes through. I hope it's prompt. And certainly on Friday when they filed to have a stay on this ruling, I hope that is approved as well. I mean, everything basically just stays the same until the conclusion of this case. Sure. One last question, then I think we're going to go ahead and let you go.
we are living in the age post-Bruin decision, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, which basically on the federal level put huge restrictions on what governments are allowed to do. Do you think the judge just kind of picked eeny, meeny, miny, mo and came up with a decision because of Bruin and just kind of kicked the can down the road?
Well, I don't know too much about this particular judge. All I'll say is that he acted immediately after the city of Columbus filed a lawsuit against him. So, that I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes. We've certainly been having discussions about that. But it does smell a little bad that the city files a lawsuit against the judge, then suddenly the judge comes out with a ruling that favors the city that's suing him, because now the city has dropped its lawsuit.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like it's just political pressure on the judge. The judge decided to come out with a ruling. I don't think it's a very well-written ruling, which is where I think some of the confusion comes from, but it's absolutely being misreported. And so my initial fear, again, is that people are going to misread it, it's going to be misreported, and then you're going to have cities trying to come out with laws, and then someone's going to have to do something about that. So I think it's a terrible idea for Zach Klein, who's the attorney in Columbus, to be misrepresenting this. I think he probably knows better. So, if he misunderstands this ruling, I don't know why he's the attorney in Columbus.
Well, it's law, and I never, ever, ever try to delve really deeply into law because it makes my head hurt.
Well, I think that when you become an attorney, you have to fail your English class. I think that's a requirement. If you don't get an F in English and in composition, you cannot become an attorney.
Yeah. All right.
Paul,
because these rulings and the laws, they're always written badly.
Right.
Dean can't hear us. I want you to tell him that I really appreciate the fact that he represents me and Ohio with the work he does in Buckeye Firearms.
Amanda's telling me, and you cannot hear Amanda, and I'm getting comments that and I'm trying to hold the phone as close as I can to the microphone, so it's easier for the people to hear you. But Amanda wanted me to tell you that she's very grateful as an Ohio resident that you and Buckeye Firearms are representing the gun owners of Ohio and what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, and of course I appreciate everything that Rob and Amanda and you do as well. Rob and Amanda, especially Amanda, since she's here in the state. And so, I think we have a mutual admiration society going here.
Very cool. We're going to go ahead and we're going to set this aside then, and thanks for trying to jump over the technical issues we have, and thanks for your time tonight, Dean.
I'm glad to be here anytime.
All right, folks, we are going to go ahead. We're going to set this one aside. We're going to go to break. I'll be back in just a little bit. We're going to hear from the complete combatant. We'll be right back with the news segment right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, we are back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I almost did it again. It's been 2 years. By the way, this week marks 2 years I've been an employee of the Second Amendment Foundation. November 1st, 2 years ago, was my date it was announced I had come on board, although it had actually happened about 3 weeks before that. Let me go to show notes and see what we're going to... Well, first up, I want to bring up a news release that came out of the home offices in Bellevue today. I'm just going to go ahead and read a bit of this. The Second Amendment Foundation filed a 9-page brief supporting their earlier motion in their federal court challenge of California's new one-way fee-shifting penalty that charges litigation challenging state gun laws. The case is known as Miller v. Bonta. Our attorneys got right to the point in this brief, said SAF founder and executive vice president Alan Gottlieb. The state has not only failed to defend their new law, but they all but conceded it is unconstitutional when they acknowledged the new section was a response to and modeled upon a Texas statute on abortion, which the defendants argued was unconstitutional. California is penalizing law-abiding firearms with what amounts to a political stunt by the California legislature. Constitutional rights are not now, never have been, pawns in a game of political one-upsmanship, yet this California statute is clearly treating the First Amendment right to redress of grievance as nothing more than a political football. The statute in question is a childish effort to push Golden State gun owners for the adoption of a law in Texas that California lawmakers and Governor Gavin Newsom don't like. We're not interested in their snit with Texas lawmakers, and California's millions of law-abiding gun owners should not be held captive nor effectively silenced in their efforts to challenge gun control laws in California, which has nothing to do with California's dispute with Texas. Rob, what do you think, man?
Paul, this is politics stacked on politics. What's fascinating to me is that Democrat gun owners got the gun control they voted for. Elections matter. People who say they respect the right of free speech put people in office who said, go ahead and sue us. And we get to physically punish you with immense fees if you try and exercise the Second Amendment in California.
Well, and I think they've got it absolutely right here. California says this Texas law is unconstitutional when it comes to abortion. So what are we going to do? We're going to take that and we're just going to turn it to guns and we're going to pass it. Huh?
Right. I mean, part of this is just that this is a bill that says I'm going to use my power to spank you, and you're just going to take it. That's because what are you? Nothing but a peon, and so that's it. So take your whipping and like it. That's
and basically it's saying, hi, the state is spending your tax dollars and you're spending your dollars. Let's fight in court. Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Who has more dollars, you or the state? And
okay, Paul. So if a judge looks at this and takes more than a day to issue a temporary restraining order, if not a permanent injunction, they've told us what kind of judge they are, loud and clear. All right, gun owners in California, you elected this, you fix it.
Well, let's just hope they get a judge that has recent knowledge of the Bruin decision and has read the Constitution in full, and you know, maybe.
See, the problem with voters and judges, the real problem with voters and judges is that most law-abiding citizens wouldn't know a good judge from a bad judge. they don't know judges. They know judges' political signs, and they know their advertisements, but that is it. So
unless you're a bad guy, you don't often interact with judges.
Right.
Well,
only your criminal friends interact with the judges.
No, my lawyer friends interact with judges, and every election I go, hey, we haven't talked for a while. Yeah, and they go, oh, I know what you're calling. Yeah, okay, here's my rundown on the judges.
There is that, and so if you have a series of lawyer friends, but most people only know a lawyer based on the phone number that's scratched into the wall at the jail. That's it. They don't have a lawyer. They don't know a lawyer, and they don't run in circles where there are lawyers.
George is a Californian. He says, California has 2 registered Democrats for each registered Republican. There is no effective opposition. Very sad. I'm blessed, and I do mean I am blessed to have the exact... In South Dakota, there are 2 registered Republicans for every registered Democrat. So, yeah. However, there's also one... It's actually 2-1-1. There's 2 registered Republicans, 1 registered Independent, 1 registered Democrat. So
California is soon to be 3 registered Democrats for each registered Republicans because the Republicans are leaving town.
Yeah, and they're going to Texas, largely.
Right.
Rob, do we want to talk about Santa Clara County?
Your call, Paul.
Yes, we want to talk about that because she's going to look really good in orange.
Okay.
Well, yeah. We're talking about Sheriff Lori Smith. On Thursday, Lori Smith resigned, and then on Friday, in a civil trial, she was found guilty on all counts for corruption. Now that the upstart of that is what the trial was to do was to remove her from office. And they tried throwing this whole thing out because, well, she quit, and the judge said, no. She's still guilty. Whether she quit or not is beside the point. She's still guilty of corruption. This leaves it open.
So wait, we didn't tell our listeners what the real case is. So this is a Santa Clara sheriff who was selling political favors, i.e. concealed carry licenses, to only her friends and to the rich people that were in her circle that were able to make sizable campaign donations. And so she got busted for it. Her attorney is saying, well, it's not really a felony, so it was just some social decisions that she made. And on the other hand, it looks like that's not the case. And then she went into the next maneuvering, which was, I'll resign because then it's moot and there's nothing you can do to me. And they're like, oh, yes, there is. We're going to continue to prosecute. So there's pieces to this, but they're trying to do as much political maneuvering to get her out of trouble as they possibly can. Rob, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, I do, because this is really serious. Okay, there were CEOs, executives of tech firms where on the form, why do you want a gun? They don't even fill it out, and they get a carry license. In contrast, 2 defense attorneys who are threatened by plaintiffs that they've met in trial, they're going, Judge, I can't take serious defense cases unless I can get a permit. And the sheriff replies, yeah, we're a little busy this year. We'll get to it. Wait a minute. What the heck? The other issue with this case is since she has been convicted, and it's very narrow, this is the only way you can remove a sheriff, because they wanted to make sure that if there were locally corrupt politicians, they couldn't find a way to get the sheriff out of office and then be immune from prosecution for corruption. Okay, this has been done to get the sheriff out of office. I think her pension can be attached. And she's a career cop. She's been there 18, 20 years, something like that.
She's been in the force for more than 30.
More than 30.
Yes.
So that's why she's trying to resign before they fire her.
And also, their two deputies, since they don't hold elected office, they're being tried on criminal charges of corruption in this pay-to-play scheme. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how the civil trial impacts those criminal trials.
Well, and go back to politics for a minute, because it does not look like they took the money and pocketed it. It looks like they took the money and they put it in her political campaign fund. Right. And so all of a sudden, it has the whole campaign finance thing. How did you get money? Where did you get money? Who gave you money? Where was that in exchange for favors? So it has another level of something.
Of political smell.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that the smell that you step in and you slide a little bit. That kind of smell.
Yeah.
All right. Next story, and I just found this one today. Study published by the Heritage Foundation's Edwin Meese III Center for Judicial and Legal Studies shows that 27 of the 30 cities with the highest murder rates are controlled by Democrats. Fox News noted that the study indicates 27 of the 30 cities have Democratic mayors. Within those cities, there are at least 14 rogue prosecutors, either backed or inspired by billionaire Democrat supporter George Soros. I kind of label that one as G. Do you think when these policies come into effect, murders go up, crime's a problem? That's surprising, but...
Not according to Governor Hochul in New York. No, crime's great in New York State. What, you're going to believe me or your lying eyes?
Well, the lying Republicans is what they've told. She says that they're just, the Republicans are just really good at lying and making things look worse than they actually are. So take this and take this George Soros money and take this, whether it's George Soros, because people use him as the big boogeyman, but whether it's him or any other out-of-state funding, there's an Oregon bill that's 114 that is up for election tomorrow. Yep. And in that bill, there's a PAC that is for the bill. And the Oregon bill, and I'm kind of changing direction to come back because there's a point to it. The Oregon bill is they want a FOID-type card to be in Oregon. And, oh, by the way, you can only get it if you take training from a police officer at one of the police officers' ranges. But, oh, by the way, Oregon has defunded the police. They don't have enough staff. They don't have enough ranges. And so the police themselves say, we don't want this. And it could warrant up to like a 2-year wait for you to get in queue to be able to get a FOID card to be able to buy a gun. Okay, so that's what is happening there. But the people who are pro it, like 80% of their funding has come from out-of-state organizations who want to invoke this onto the folks in Oregon. So now you take that, and then you look at this 27 out of the 30 cities with the highest crime rates, and then you look at the outside money that's coming in to try to do somewhat the same thing. And it's like, really? Are there people that are just, it's not in my backyard, so I'm going to invoke a science experiment on you and your community just to see what's going to happen? And, kind of like shaking up the ant farm. And then looking at it to see what it takes to build it again.
Amanda, more than half of the money supporting Measure 114 in Oregon was donated by just 5 donors, all of them out of state.
Right. Yeah. Crazy.
Well,
crazy.
Right now the polls say, and unfortunately it's within the margin of error, that constitutional amendment may fail. But one of the reasons is it says the day, immediately you need to get these permissions from the state in order to buy a gun. By the way, the mechanisms by which you do that, they're not in place. And if the state slow rolls it, it could be years before you can buy a gun in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the hypocrisy here is inside the law. You have to, for a first-time gun buyer, you have to take a course to be able to purchase a gun. Part of that course is live fire. And so you have to be able to handle a gun that you don't yet have to be able to buy a gun that you don't yet have. It's a perfect storm to make sure nobody can ever buy a firearm again.
No, you're going to handle a gun. You're just going to handle the generic gun. Here's a revolver, honey. Shoot 2 shots from it. It's useless. It's absolutely useless portion of their so-called training.
Well, this is where a little bit of judicial oversight might help. You and I could imagine a very similar law. I go into my local shooting range. I go, here, I'm going to take a gun course. And they go, okay, here are the guns we're renting tonight. Which one fits your hand? But instead of doing something as reasonable as of that, they said, oh, the police shooting range is where this will be done. It will be done by the local sheriff's office or chief of police. Whoops, they're not really set up to loan firearms to civilians.
Not only that, you're going to get the Beretta 92 FS. No matter the size of your hand, you're getting that monstrosity.
I thought you'd get the Tupperware of guns that begins with a G, but that would just be me.
Well, yeah, you get what I'm saying, though. You're going to get whatever gun is issued. It doesn't matter the size of your hand. Doesn't matter if you're recoil sensitive. You're going to get what they issue, and you're going to like it.
Sure.
All right. And hey, we do have a third co-host in here. Crosley's joining us. What do we want? Do we want to do a break and do one more segment, or do we want to just do a couple more stories and jump to DGUs? What do you guys think?
Let's keep going.
Well, let's do a break, and I think we got enough for one more full segment. So we're going to hear from the good folks at CNJFO, and we'll be right back with one more news segment. Hang on, everybody. Right back after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights, and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the second news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Firearms Policy. Darn it. I gotta quit. I can never mention that organization again, ever, because it sticks in my mind because I did it for so many years.
You just have to practice doing it right, but not now.
No, here's what I'm going to recommend. We'll just get this out there so everybody does it. reorganize the words so that it's not, you don't do the introduction that way. Introduce it as Second Amendment
Foundations Polite Society Podcast.
Because
there
that
we
way
go.
you start down that path and your mind doesn't take you to the other path.
Exactly.
Well,
this is the news segment again of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. Rob, let's talk about Judge Sinatra. He did it his way.
He certainly did. Actually did it his way several times now. And thank goodness that he's read the Supreme Court's Bruin decision and took it seriously. As in, oh, they must mean what they say. This case involves a Niagara Falls pastor and another minister, and it blocks the enforcement of provisions in New York's recently passed so-called Concealed Carry Improvement Act. That act barred individuals from bringing firearms not only into churches, synagogues, mosques, but also, quote, any place of religious observation. That sounds like a cemetery to me. That sounds like a picnic where I come from when we pray. And he did it on a request for a temporary restraining order. Yes, how would you like to be this guy, Judge John L. Sinatra Jr.? He issued a preliminary injunction less than 24 hours after hearing oral arguments. My concern is that justice in the U.S. is like food in the Soviet Union. Not everyone gets some. Synagogues that appealed this very same law in the New York City area were ignored by the courts. The judge says, yeah, I'll get to it. Within hours, the FBI also issued warnings to synagogues across the river in New Jersey about potential threats that they faced. Honest citizens in New Jersey synagogues are still disarmed by New Jersey's gun control laws, as are they parishioners? No. Attendees in synagogues across the river in New York, in the New York City area. This is dangerous.
Here's a question, though, Rob.
Yeah?
Were the synagogues and that portion of the court case also heard by Judge not Frank Sinatra? Or was it a different, I mean, his mom made a mistake when she didn't add the F into the middle of his name, but, there. So, so the Judge Sinatra, did he also hear the synagogue case? Because it seemed as if when you were reading the response that when Judge Sinatra responded so quickly, people were shocked and amazed that his response was that quick. Is the other judges in their standard timely, not timely timeline, and this is just the speedy judge?
He was presented with a very similar case, and because of a technicality in the case, he said the appellants didn't have standing. The SAF went, okay, we'll find somebody else. They changed the wording slightly, brought a virtually identical case, and he goes, I recognize this. And in his argument to the first case, Judge Sinatra said, you guys are likely going to succeed, but you don't have standing. So he was all ready to make the decision. Mm-hmm. And as to who is affected, I've heard conflicting arguments, and I am not a lawyer. I heard one argument that said, this is just in the counties where the two appellants live. And the other said, no, this governs all of New York, except then I hear people in and around New York City say, well, we don't think it applies to us and our synagogue. So I can't tell you.
Interesting.
Well, I do know that there's a northern district of Texas and there's a southern federal district of Texas. I don't know about New York. I don't know if there's just one federal district in New York or if New York City gets its own district or what. So I know Sinatra is not he's a district court judge. He is not a appellate level judge.
Right.
So that may be why it doesn't apply to the New York City area. So
well, and what's interesting at the what'll be fascinating, will New York appeal this? Because that means that decision might apply over a larger area, like New York and New Jersey, maybe?
Because they are in the same federal appeals
Go back
circuit.
to politics. If the governor does not win, does that change the whole drive and motivation of what's going on in New York State?
They have. I don't think the attorney general is up for election. So
right, but here's the governor. So if they've got an extremely anti-gun and vocal governor, and now they got a new one that is not anti-gun and not vocal, and the second in command, the attorney general, takes directives and initiatives.
Well,
assuming she does.
Assuming she does, but
yeah, so tomorrow could change this, maybe.
Let me segue into our next story, because that provides me a great segue. I want to talk about Connecticut. Tomorrow,
but Rob's all like,
well, okay, so here's one way that a pro-2A New York governor can change things. It's called pardons. Go ahead. Yeah. I would encourage you, and what is it? The laws where it's a nonviolent possessory offense. He'll go, I suggest you, here, we're going to do this faster. Plead guilty, and I'll still give you a pardon.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question. If you're pardoned, does it restore all rights? Is it like it didn't happen?
I believe it's like it never happened.
Theoretically, yes.
So it's wiped. The slate is wiped clean. It's not the smudge remains, and you're just free to go.
If you can commute a sentence, you can also issue a pardon, and that's the distinction.
Okay.
Now on to Connecticut.
Yes, Governor Lamont in
and thanks, Dana.
Yes, Dana put up a comment that Sinatra is the Western District of New York, which implies an Eastern District, which would be New York City.
Probably New York City, right?
Governor Lamont of Connecticut is currently leading Republican challenger Bob Stefanowski when this story was written a few days ago by 11 points. But earlier last week, Lamont called on lawmakers to criminalize the possession of semi-automatic rifles, including the millions of firearms already in the hands of law-abiding gun owners. That last call for registration saw many law enforcement officers refuse to register their personal firearms, but Lamont saying, hey, look, anything that's registered, Mr. and Mrs. Connecticut, now you got to turn them in, to quote another politician from the left coast. Lamont now wants any semi-automatics in the state gone. Remember that, Connecticut, when you go vote tomorrow.
So one explanation.
This election is going to be interesting because I believe that there are firearms issues like all over the place, and there's a lot of different states who are really kind of going to struggle with this.
One explanation I've heard is that Democrat gun owners go, oh, that's so crazy. I know it says it right here in the paper, but I can't believe that our governor's that crazy. And surely those laws don't apply to me because I'm a party faithful. Well, yeah, dude, they do. we'll see. If you don't know how crazy the Democrats have been on Second Amendment issues, that attitude of trying to make common sense fit where it doesn't apply almost seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get this comment up here real quick about our last story. Pardons can be conditional. They can restore some rights, or only some. I got pardoned and only got my voting rights back. Didn't get my firearms back until later. All right. Well, CMT Designs and Arms, thank you for bringing that.
So there's
to our
pardoning,
attention.
there's pardoning, there's commuting, there's partial pardoning. There you go.
Conditional
Appreciate
pardoning. Who knew?
Yeah.
All right. I do want to bring in a couple more stories, and these are, again, these are very topical considering tomorrow's election day. I want to go to the buying votes story, and I'm going to go ahead and take this one. The gun prohibition lobby, Everytown, Giffords, and the rest, have been perpetuating the myth that the gun lobby, usually the NRA, has been buying the votes of pro-gun representatives and senators since the 1970s. Now, let's explore that a little bit. As of September 30th, Bloomberg has spent $1,058,690 in an independent expenditure in support of the anti-gun representative Lucy McBath. That's one race in Georgia seat, House seat number 7. That's one race. They've spent $1 million against Senator Johnson of Wisconsin, $850,000 against Senate candidate Alan Lexalt in Nevada, $786,210 against Joe O'Dea running the U.S. Senate race in Colorado, and over $1 million against Senate candidate Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania. And get this one, $1,036,999 because they were too cheap to kick in that last buck against Herschel Walker in the Georgia Senate race. All these funds are in addition to the over $7 million Everytown has spent prior to October 2022. Most of this money has been donated by one person, Michael Bloomberg, and all of that money excludes George Soros money. So, who's buying votes?
Yeah. And what that says is government is making too many decisions. Because, how did Nancy Pelosi become, a 300 millionaire? Easy. She bought insider trading. Government is controlling a huge portion of our economy. They can declare you and your business illegal tomorrow. Of course, people donate huge amounts of money just to stay in business.
And I think it's also a little more innocent than that too. She is paid tens of thousands of dollars per speech to go speak at colleges, and she speaks at colleges daily.
Okay.
And she's invited all the damn time. So, if she makes $50,000 a week speaking at colleges,
yeah, it adds up pretty. 10,000 here, 10,000 there, pretty soon.
Yeah,
you're talking real money, right? I mean, it's sort of, and it's. Has she written a book? Because have you heard the whole theory of book advances and money laundering?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So the fact that they got a book deal that is $1 million, $5 million, $10 million in advance of a book that they haven't even written, that they're going to ghostwrite with somebody that may or may not sell. I think I've seen the Hillary book at the bookstore for $1. Well, not even $1, 99 cents. So, somebody paid her millions to write the 99-cent bestseller.
But then some buddy who wants political favors go, yeah, I paid, $100 a copy for your book, Hillary. I have a whole pallet of them. You're welcome.
Right.
Now deliver.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. All of that. So there's a wide variety, but a lot of this actually is in buying votes. It is in politics. Name recognition is everything. People look at you. You look at people, and we all do it. You look at people, and you decide based on the fact that this person might have looked like your school bully in second grade, and you decide you don't like them, right? You look at them and you decide you're going to be their best friend. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. So people look at people and get an immediate reaction. So their goal is to get your face out there so that people can get an immediate reaction, feed you enough information that you decide whether they're your people or they're not your people, and then they feed you enough information so that you remember their name. I mean, people would vote for Colonel Sanders when they get to the polling location because they remember that and they liked his chicken.
In that case, I'm in deep trouble if I ever decide to run politically because I'm told I'm a dead ringer for the guy in Breaking Bad. So.
There you go. Right? I don't know, but
so do you want to vote for a guy who makes crack? I mean, I don't,
Well, now let's back up, and I'm surprised you didn't say this, Amanda, because you're running for NRA board. Does the NRA buy votes? Absolutely not. We pay the NRA to monitor political races and remind us when to vote. The power of the NRA is not that they can throw money at candidates, it's that they can send millions and millions of members a little reminding email that goes, these races are important, you might want to go vote tomorrow.
Or they can, while the host is on the air, they can call his phone. If you might have heard a beep, 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 beep while I was talking to Dean, that was the NRA's phone number calling me while I was on the air. They might, the day before the election, decide to call and say, hey, we're supporting this and this and this person in your local election.
The interesting part is the NRA does that with volunteers. So it is a volunteer and a phone bank. So I like to equate the NRA, the NRA is the laser pointer, and we're all the cats. And they point us, and everybody flocks that way. That's why the NRA doesn't tell people how many members it really has, because it isn't about the dues-paying members. There are so many people who vote with the NRA, who follow the NRA, who look at what the NRA has to say when they make their voting decisions, even though they're not a dues-paying member. And a household may have a singular dues-paying member, and yet it's the mom, the dad, and 3 adult children all are going to vote. So that one dues-paying member is a 5-fold in the vote. So it's not a true representation to say that it's the 5 million, 6 million, whatever that hidden number really is.
Yeah.
And I like his herbs and spices. George Geller says that he'd vote for Colonel Sanders before he'd vote for Hillary or Newsom. We may have an opportunity. Again. Newsom may be the front runner for 2024. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, Lord help us. Yes, he might be.
Well, and Paul, be careful what we pray for here, because California has so many faults. It's like Kathy Hochul saying, judge me on my record. Okay, we get to look at New York. Now, Newsom will have more money than God, but California has more warts than a toad.
Well, there is that. So here's another thing that I heard. Think about this. Riddle me this, Batman. And that would be Tulsi Gabbard, who has just come out and said she's not a Democrat. Well, there's people who are saying she's a Republican. She's not a Republican.
No, she's not.
She's just not a Democrat, or not a this Democratic Party Democrat. So
She
what if
is?
she is brilliant? What if she is absolutely brilliant, disassociated herself from the party, watches the party collapse, and then goes, never mind, I'm back in and I want to be your front runner?
She is endorsing a number of Republican governors, among them Kristi Noem, my governor of my home state.
How much press she is getting that she could never buy.
Yeah, huge.
Rob,
look
you
how
look
many.
like you're going to explode.
Look how
No,
many.
I'm-
Look how many allies she's getting in these Republican governors she's endorsing.
Right. I don't know that she would win national office. She'd probably even have a very hard time, because of her history, winning a statewide office. She might be appointed to a position in a state or at the national level. That's where I think she'd end up.
I'm going to have a hard time because of her prior
Right.
support for things like red flag laws, for things like assault weapons bans, and it's there.
You want to put the word rabid in front of support.
Yeah.
That's,
I'm not. Before I would support her, I would want her rabid support of things like how do I put this? Some of our causes, like the getting rid of the 1968 Gun Control Act. Like, I want her to work with us on a lot of things before I say, okay, maybe she's okay. Just one statement and going out and stumping for a few governors and saying the Democrats are bad now. Okay, you've started to make the turn. I'll support you when you put a lot more work in. All right, let's and just because it's Schadenfreude, I want one more story in news, and then we'll go to DGUs. The ATF, if you think there's one place where they would be responsible, and if there's a place where it's safe to have a firearm that's not going to get into the general public, that maybe shouldn't get into the general public, you would think it would be safe with the ATF. Well, not so much. Since September 2015, the ATF has utilized the National Disposal Branch, formerly the National Firearms and Ammunition Destruction Branch, to centralize and streamline the disposal process of fortified ATF non-owned firearm or forfeited ATF non-owned firearms. Each year, the ATF destroys thousands of firearms at the NDB. The U.S. Justice Department's Inspector General noted announcing in a recent report the DOJ Office of the Inspector General undertook this audit following discovery that thousands of firearms parts, and ammunition had been stolen from NFAD from 2016 to 2019. In other words, it turns out that the people ATF trusts, they're leaking thousands of firearms from the ATF. So the ATF, if you make a paperwork error, they're shutting your gun business down. Yet they are letting fully auto firearms go away. They're letting parts, they're letting full auto sears go away. They're letting binary triggers go away. This ATF needs to go away.
yeah.
If you're waiting for an argument, it's going to be a long dead spot in the air here.
Right. That I didn't know. The thing I find interesting to this story is I didn't know that there was a national disposal branch. The National Firearms and Ammunitions Destruction Branch. I didn't know that there was one of those. I honestly didn't, because if that were the case, and if it were available to everybody, why wouldn't the local sheriffs utilize that instead of the big the big public meltdowns where they're taking guns to the smelters and pouring them in with the news crew there, blah, blah, blah. Why wasn't there, this is just, here's what we do, here's how we do it. Right. I just didn't know that this existed. How many other government agencies that have letters
exist that we don't know about, right?
Mm-hmm.
What bothers me is, are we melting down serviceable firearms that should be sold on the open market? As a taxpayer, that infuriates me.
We melted down Sammy Davis Jr.'s 1911.
Right. Dumber than sled. Proving that our government has way too much money.
I wish John Richardson could be with us tonight because he is familiar with this story. I'm not. There was a California gun buyback a few years ago, and a elderly woman brought in a war trophy that her husband had from World War II, a Sturmgewehr.
Mm-hmm.
And she was given, I think, $50, and the gun was destroyed.
Mm-hmm. And there's no saving it. I had a conversation with the dude that runs the NRA's museum, as they have tried to step in and save some of these guns that have history and historical value, and they are just cut off at the knees.
By?
But well, Sammy Davis Jr.'s gun specifically was that they were told that there's no historical value to it, and it was destroyed. Literally, that's what they were told, because they also said that it only had a value of about $300. And I'm like, anybody who's ever watched,
I got $300. I'll give them $350 for it. You know,
I'd pay $3,000. I was like sight unseen for a gun that belonged to the Rat Pack. And actually, Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the best gun handlers in that era. He and Jerry Lewis.
Yes.
And so, I mean, there's this whole history to them and their gun handling that is part of Americana, and it just makes me so darned angry.
All right, let's do this. Let's get to we're 15 minutes before the traditional end of the show, and we've got to get DGUs in. Let's skip to a break. We're going to hear from JPFO. When we come back, we've got our DGU segment, and we'll be right back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. JPFO.org.
Welcome back to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. That works, Amanda. Thank you. This is the defensive gun use segment. And as I do every week, I'm going to remind you these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. Defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of our hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Rob, looks like you got our first one out of Ohio.
This story is very familiar to me. Police were called to a home in Franklin, Ohio at 3 in the morning. The homeowner's partially blind. He'd gotten home from the hospital just a few hours earlier. The homeowner heard someone breaking into his home. He armed himself and moved toward the sound, the back door. That's when he ran into an intruder, and the intruder goes, "Well, I didn't expect you to be here." Rather than the intruder moving away, like, "Oops, sorry, my bad," he moves toward the homeowner. Now the homeowner is an older gentleman, doesn't move real fast, but he moves fast enough to get the gun up and press the trigger. The intruder was familiar to people in the neighborhood, including the home invasion victim. Prior to the incident, he'd stolen firearms and musical equipment from this very same homeowner. The victim told dispatchers, "Hey, I just shot at somebody. I'm not sure if I hit him. There's video available, shows lights on, and the police are looking around the back door going, I think you got him. They then call a canine team, and the dog follows a blood trail through the neighborhood. It leads them to a garden shed down the street. Police recognized the intruder and recognized that he had outstanding warrants for his arrest. I should learn to read. The intruder claimed that he wasn't dangerous, but he came with a history of drugs and weapons charges. The suspect was taken to a medical center to have the bullet removed from his backside. Then he was taken to jail, where he's locked up and held on a $50,000 bond. He's charged with burglary, but he has an outstanding warrant for domestic violence. What say you?
We'll just say he sounds like he's a wonderful individual that is just misunderstood.
And was just turning his life around.
Turning his
his life around. That's why he got shot in the backside. Now, you see what I did there, right? Okay, so the courts have seen this before. They know that we're operating in the past. We're reacting to what we saw, not what's going on right now. And it takes us time to figure out what's going on, plan of action, get a firearm up, decide to shoot. The guy moves. He's no longer a threat. That all takes time.
Yes.
So they call it the reactionary gap, and they go, oh, he may have been coming toward you when you started to pick the gun up and decided to press the trigger. By the time you pressed it, he'd turn sideways.
Yes.
Let's add to it the first part of the story. This guy's visually impaired.
So
he had very, very restricted limits to his eyesight. Our county had a case where the sheriff denied a concealed carry license to a man who was legally blind. And so it had to go to court, because think about this. Who needs a gun, right? Do you know if you're blind, do you know who's in your house? Is it somebody who should be in your house? You may not know who is he, but that kind of a thing. So the court case in the county was the sheriff was almost mandated to say, no, I'm not giving you a license. But when the guy went to court, the judge is almost mandated to say, yeah, you're going to have to. But somebody's going to have to set restrictions to say, how bad is your vision? Can you identify, a good guy from a bad guy, a threat from not a threat, all of those types of things. And that's tied into this. So not only do you have the reactionary gap and I shot you in the backside, but you have the fact that I just know that it's somebody that shouldn't be in my house, and I shot in the general direction of where I heard the thumping and the noise and a voice that was not a voice that should have been there. Yes.
Well, legally blind covers a huge range, and exactly part of what that might mean is, your eyesight is such that you can't drive. Maybe you only can read with the help of electronics and giant print. Okay. So you may be able to see, hey, that's someone who doesn't belong in my house. The law still applies to you. You have to recognize that they're an immediate, unavoidable, and lethal threat. The fact that you may have to do that at the distance of 2 feet rather than 20, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm going to bring
but you can use your other faculties to help you do that. It's not just all sight.
I'm going to bring a personal angle to this. My sister is legally blind. She cannot see other than light and shadow out of her left eye. Auto accident when she was 6 years old. And so there are people that would, just because she's legally blind, deny her the ability to own a firearm. believe it or not, she can see just fine out of the other eye. Should anything ever happen, I hope that nothing affects the vision in her other eye, so she
Her
can.
good eye, right?
Yeah, and even if it does, even if there's sweat or blood or whatever, she still can hear. She still can react in other ways to know if there's a threat coming from. If somebody is striking you, and you can tell what direction they're striking you from, it's a last chance. You've got to do something. You know you're about to meet your end. If you don't do something, you know the blows are coming from this direction. You know,
that's what you've got. I have a blind story that kind of fits into this, because this is an area that I've got a lot of interest in. My mother was losing her eyesight, and in that they were preparing her, so she was learning she was doing books on tapes because she could no longer read, and we had to get a giant TV, and just things to accommodate her. Well, she drove, but she lost all depth perception, and so that was the first thing that went. So she would visualize this. She drove her Ford Explorer into a parking spot, parked in a handicapped spot, folded out her white-tipped cane, and tapped her way into the store.
Oh!
Right?
Okay.
Because there's different levels of vision and where people are, and we knew that where she was on Monday may not be where she is on Friday or the following Monday. And so that's the other piece to this is, kind of where they are and what's happening. So I just think it's pretty interesting, and I think that was a good story.
Let me get a few more comments in here. George says, going back to this DGU, our local cops often recognize the perps from previous encounters. That's throughout the United States. That's cops. That's bad guys.
Frequent flyers. Yep.
Yes. Going to the blind part of the story, C&T Designs and Arms says, I don't believe anyone should develop restrictions that way. That could lead to the government saying if you don't have 20/20, you don't get a gun. And Rob, you and I do not have 20/20 vision.
Right. At least not up close.
Right. Well,
okay. Let's take half a step back. Bob Main was losing his, and I forget what you call it, his close ability to focus close in. And he goes, okay, rather than have to go get reading glasses when I go to shoot, I need to learn how to manage those two fuzzy dots in front of me and have enough practice with the firearm that I still get hits. And he's done it. So there are lots of accommodations that we make, and they work.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I went to a red dot so I don't have to see up close.
Yeah. We're getting lots more comments in here. We'll get a couple more of them in. Blind is not a second class. If you're blind, so what? You're still responsible for your shots.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
That is the other piece. Right. And that guy's shot went right in the can. So.
Dum-dum.
Well, I didn't say bullseye, so we'll just move on.
Guns and Barbecue, a YouTube guy, is legally blind and better with guns than a lot of people that can see.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that channel, but there you go.
No, yeah, very good point.
The guy that writes our DGUs, and thank you for doing that. Dana says, my father couldn't see much, but was able to read the numbers in the house across the street. Macular degeneration took peripheral vision.
Ah, interesting.
That I hope I never get that. For the last 25 years, I have worked on developing my peripheral vision. It was a practice I picked up when I started driving truck. And I worked for 20 years as I was a truck driver on developing my peripheral vision. I hope I never lose it. I'm told, extraordinary peripheral vision. I hope it never goes away. So, let's go to our next one. This one in Romney, West Virginia. And, yeah, we're going to go late. We're 3 minutes to the end of the show. We're going to be late. John Delaney was sitting in his truck near a bus stop when students stood by waiting for the school bus to arrive. It was around 6:30 a.m. While he was sitting there, another man approached him with a closed knife in his hand. A verbal confrontation ensued, and the other man reached the knife through the window. Fearing the man would flip the knife open, Delaney fired 2 shots. Both shots struck the knife wielder in the chest. Delaney exited his vehicle, called 911, and began to perform CPR. The man was pronounced dead at the scene. The bus arrived shortly after the shooting, and 5 of the children witnessed the incident. The children are obviously interviewed differently than adults. There are trained interviewers we work closely with who conduct these interviews for us, but the statements were all very consistent, New Hampshire County Sheriff Nathan Syons explained. Syons told reporters the investigation continues, but all indications point to self-defense. The case will eventually go to the prosecuting attorney and likely a grand jury. Delaney was legally allowed to carry the firearm. West Virginia is a permitless carry state. Sheriff Syons would not say what may have sparked the confrontation, but there is a history, and he would not elaborate. The children who witnessed the shooting are also being provided emotional counseling. What I want to bring up about this one is this. There is a debate in the firearms community. Do you provide emergency life-saving care after you shoot? I'm on the side of you don't. Simply because somebody just did something so egregious, so horrific, that you had to use deadly force to stop a violent threat against you or another innocent person. How do you know that that person is really not faking it and looking to go for your gun? Because you're going to have to bring your gun right into proximity with that person. I'm saying it's too dangerous to do that.
Well, and I think that there's a line. I agree with you, because there's this line. It says, okay, so this one is pretty cut and dry. He's giving CPR, right? So you assume that the guy is out. But what if it's first aid? What if it is packing a wound, or whatever? So now, what if it's only their arm? So where do you draw that line? When do you get close? When don't you get close? And frankly, I agree. If you're in a spot where you're forced to shoot them to stop them from doing something, then you call 911 and the rescue squad, and they just better cross their fingers and hope that someone else can provide that aid. Rob?
One of the issues is, how do we know that was the only weapon that the attacker had? He has a gun. You recover the gun. What about the knife? What about the second knife? In fact, multiple weapons is the rule on attackers rather than the exception.
What about a second attacker?
And police are trained to frisk people. They want to make sure they get all the weapons. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what's in his pocket.
Ooh.
I don't necessarily want to know what's in his pocket. It might be a stabby pokey thing that has drug residue on it or something like that.
Right.
I want to get this. I got to get this one in. Whoops. There we go. If they tried to kill you, don't get close. Bingo.
I agree.
Bingo, bingo, bingo.
I agree.
We're already over time. We normally do a commercial break here. We're going to skip that because I've already run through all our paid commercials. Let's just skip that for tonight. I'm going to go right to what we've been doing in media. Rob, as always, you're up first. What do you want to plug? What's going on with Slowfax or anything else?
Well, let's go to Slowfax. I wrote an article because I was reading some really strange things in the media. So I have to ask, does gun control save lives or does it cost lives? Maybe to us that's obvious. Other people it isn't. The world's clearly violent. There are lots of people, though, who think we could pass more laws that would make the world safer and less violent. Well, we're not the first people to think of that. In fact, we have thousands of gun control regulations on the books already. Lots of our neighbors don't know that. I think gun control laws are dangerous because I've studied it, but the reasons are complex, and I don't think they're obvious. That article is a little long. It's called Does Gun Control Save Lives or Cost Lives? It's at slowfax.wordpress.com. My articles are picked up at Clash Daily and at AmmoLand, Shooting Sports News. Amanda, Paul, what have you guys been up to?
Well, I want to grab this, and I want to promote our buddy John Richardson's Only Guns and Money blog. He's not able to join us tonight. He's out on the road right now, but he does write a lot, and even though he's not on the show tonight, he is updating his blog. I do encourage everybody to go over there, onlygunsandmoney.com. If you want to know what's going on with the NRA...
Let's talk about the latest story. So one of the NRA members has passed away.
Yes.
So, and I don't... He was a pro football player, and I know that. I'd never met the gentleman, so I wasn't familiar with him. But what that does is that clears the way... Sorry to sound like that. For Frank Tate, who was the last lady in waiting, to be appointed onto the NRA board until the annual meeting that's happening in April or May, whenever that date is. And so Frank Tate is going to have a short stint on the board. So if you're a pro Frank Tate guy, he's getting his window of opportunity. He will not be on the ballot. But so John kind of outlines the Frank Tate issue, and as does he outline a lot of other stuff. But I thought that was interesting because there's so many people who were rooting for Frank Tate who did everything grassroots wise, and so now he'll at least be on the board for a short period of time. But he did not circulate a petition, and he was not nominated, so he's not on the ballot, and so he cannot and will not continue past the annual meeting. But
he is on it for now. And Dave Butts is the longtime NRA board member that passed away. So, Amanda, what's Women for Gun Rights? I know it was on hiatus for October. It started back up. And
it'll start this coming Friday.
Okay.
I wanted to get us through the election cycle, and so it'll start this coming Friday, and then the following Friday I have Amy Lucas out of Detroit on, and so there is that. The other things that I've got going on is obviously the Eye on the Target Radio. It show both radio and Ops Lens, so on demand TV. And then the last thing is stay tuned. I am putting together a series of, I guess they're endorsements. They're not really memes. They're more like posters, but they are photos and quotes. And I'm finding out what some people think of me as I put together this endorsement for my run for the NRA board. Some of it is fairly entertaining, we'll just say, but
that takes intestinal fortitude, Amanda. I don't know that I would have the guts to do what you're doing, to ask people, what do you think of me in the broad spectrum that you did?
In the broad spectrum, I need 2 or 3 sentences on something, and then I'm going to use it the way that they wrote it, and it's some of it's pretty darn interesting. But I got 64 different people that you guys all know that have either given me their quotes or committed to giving me their quotes, and and we'll go from there. So we'll put it together, and so pretty soon you'll be tired of seeing me with smiling next to somebody.
Very cool.
But
all right.
I was proud to
they
endorse
say
you.
I need 50,000 votes of life members in order to make it onto the board. That's
Well,
the number.
I'm pretty sure you got two.
I got two. I think
Rob, I think you'll go in with me, right? You'll
Right,
vote for
definitely.
Amanda with me, right? So you
Yeah.
need 49,998.
got it. I'll keep working on that.
All right. We're going to go ahead and we're going to shut this down, folks. We are over time by, 8 minutes so far and counting. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for commenting. And please do come join me the rest of the week. We did not get one today for the bullet simply because I had a lot of things going on. And we did not get a bullet in today, but do come join me the rest of the week, Tuesday through Friday, 5 p.m. Central Time for the bullet. And we'll talk tomorrow about the election. Obviously, that's going to be the elephant in the room. Wednesday, we're talking about the fallout from the election, and we'll probably have results from most of the nation. So come join me, 5 p.m. Central Time, the rest of the week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight, listening, for those of you on podcast, and we will see you next time. Well, wait a minute. I got to go back to show notes because I close out Polite Society differently than I do the bullet. That wraps up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank Dean Rieck for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until the next time,
Stay safe.
be aware.
And we'll
And
see
we'll
you
see you
down the road.
down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, not much of a, probably not almost any of a post show today. As you probably heard, the dogs really want out, and they've wanted out for about the past hour. Susan is working tonight, and so there's nobody but me in the house, nobody to let them out. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the streams down. Again, thank you everybody for watching,